Help us understand this timeline. Does it make sense to you? I know there's been concerns about whether this is moving too quickly. The UK saying that, the first couple of months of the new year, I think that's in line with what you've been talking about. The president, though, saying an approval could come even earlier. Do those things square? They may.
Well, probably not. I think the UK is right that access to the vaccine is really a 2021 event. What we're likely to see this year is a very staged introduction of the vaccine through an emergency use authorization for certain high-risk groups. But the likelihood that that's going to come in October is very low, extremely low. The trials enrolled a little bit more quickly than we thought they would, so that's been successful. The Pfizer trial, I'm on the board of Pfizer, and the Moderna trial have been enrolling really well. But the infection rate in this country has been declining, thankfully, over the last couple of months. And so you might not be able to reach the number of events that you need to have in the trial until a little bit later now. I think some of the initial expectations have to be rethought because you might see a decline in the number of events. Remember, these are event-based trials. They're going to read out when you get a certain number of people who actually get COVID in the clinical trials. And in order to get COVID, they have to be exposed to COVID. And you have declining infection rates right now in the country. To get a readout in October from these clinical trials, you really need to have absolute perfection in terms of the number of cases you have. The vaccines would need to be highly efficacious in order to show a signal in October. I think it's far more likely that you're not going to get a readout until at least November. And remember, before you even authorize these under an emergency use authorization, you're going to want some long-term follow-up data on a sizable number of patients. And patients get the first dose, but then they have to wait 3 weeks in the case of Pfizer and 4 weeks in the case of Moderna's vaccine to get the second dose. And then you're going to want to start counting or looking a few weeks after that second dose, because that's when the antibody titers peak or start to rise. So you're talking about, waiting a month or two after that second dose. That's a while.
One of the things I've never understood about these tests, and I apologize if this question may come from straight ignorance, are people who are enrolled in the test who take the test vaccine then purposely exposed to COVID? How does it work in that regard?
No, they're not exposed to COVID, nor are they tested for COVID antibodies prior to enrolling, or excluded from the trial if they've been exposed to coronavirus in the past. So it's all comers who meet the criteria of the clinical trials. You have to be certain ages. They exclude certain comorbidities, things like that. But so there are entry criteria. But basically what you're doing is you're just vaccinating a very large population and waiting and seeing how many people get coronavirus or get COVID symptoms in the control group versus the treatment group. So you're just waiting for them naturally either to get infected or not. They're not going to be intentionally exposed. In fact, they're encouraged in the clinical trial. The directions to patients who enroll is continue engaging in mask wearing, social distancing, all the things that you should be doing even if you weren't enrolled in a vaccine trial. They're encouraged to continue those behaviors in the trial.